Hello world, this is Harper. I'm recording this in the middle of the night. This is my final loop in Deathloop. I didn't stream it. I've been live streaming less, mostly just because I've just not been feeling so great. Stress for fighting games or just wanting some privacy. I don't want to turn everything I do into content, but this is important because we were showing off this game for a while, so I just wanted to eventually do a full loop here. The idea here is that we have to kill, I believe it's 8 targets in the course of a single day, and we have a variety of ways to initially do that, but then it turns out if you follow a critical path, there's like actual progress that will give you a clean route to take them all out in a single day. This is our first target that we're going to be taking care of. Her name is Harriet. And while we're here, we are going to do something that will allow us to take care of another target later on. I have 2 powers. I have invisibility and I have teleportation. They have fancier names. I believe it's like, I don't know, there's like Nexus and blah, blah, blah. It's fucking invisibility and teleport. I think I'll end up showing off more of it in a bit. The key thing is for my invisibility, I have a augment to it so that if I'm not moving, my magic, my power, right, essentially doesn't drain. And then when I fire, I don't exit invisibility. As for my teleport, my blink, and it is just blink from the Dishonored series. This is an arcane game, so it's fine. They can just have blink in their game. I have extra distance, and then I also have it. So if I use it in the air, it'll slow me down in the air for a moment. That doesn't last forever, but it does last a while. I'm using fairly silent weapons here. I'm using an upgraded nail gun in order to be very silent. I also have an SMG, which some people are like, where do you get that? And the answer is in Igor's camp in the complex. There's actually a gun that's guaranteed to spawn, which is a small arms submachine gun, which is silenced. And because guns in this game are particularly accurate, even though, I'm trying to be careful here, you can treat it almost as a sniper rifle. Speaking of a sniper rifle, I have one just in case, in the off chance that I need to deal with things. I have right now, I thought I had an ability, and maybe I do right now, an ability so that I can hack at a greater distance, but that might not be the case. Basically, the core loop of Deathloop is going on these various missions, scouting out targets, and eventually finding out the optimal ways to kill them, and figuring out the interlocking, larger puzzle to kill them in a single day. For instance, there's a target who mostly hides inside of a bunker, and you can sneak in there, but if she detects you, she will set off a nuke, and because you are caught in a time loop, that just resets the loop. She is a character that we're actually going to deal with pretty easily later on, because she goes to meet another target that she is having a romantic relationship with, and we have an easy way of disposing of them. But at the time you're going through the game, you're disposing of them one by one, figuring out all these puzzle pieces, and you're not gonna, unless you are a speedrunner who knows stuff ahead of time, you're not going to know that you can take care of 2 of them in the afternoon at this one specific spot. And even to get in there, you need a special password, which I believe passwords in this game are randomly generated every time. Now, there is a threat that Juliana, who is one of the other major characters and eventually the main character we're going to have to kill for the story, there's a chance that she will show up. I think for these, I had it set to friends only, which is why we don't see her as much. I really like playing as Juliana. I've shown that off, and then I like having Juliana invade my game. I kind of messed around with the settings because I wanted to finish the game. This is a cool thing so it's not really an immersive sim. I don't even really consider Dishonored to be really an immersive sim, although it lives in that space. This is something that's fun about these. This is a route into these hangars that I didn't know about before. I didn't know that there were actually sort of these little underground areas for the grates to enter from below the buildings by the piers. Now this one leads into a hangar that has a walkway that will lead into another one, which is where my target is. I can only kill this target in the morning, so I have to take care of her first. The nice thing is I have a perk that allows me to absorb poison gas and breathe it in and heal myself when I breathe it in. And I know that the area that she is in has poison gas because she's basically running a death cult. She'll like drop people. If you sit there and watch, she'll drop people on a crane into the poison gas. And you know, because it's a time loop, some people are here to just like party. Some other are here to like to explore like weird human blah blah blah, all sorts of stuff. This is something that's going to help us with another target later on. This is going to help us kill somebody named Frank. And usually to go kill Frank, you have to go into his little party house, which has, the first time you go into it, you'll probably put on this wristband that turns off all your powers. One of the powers that you have as the main character, whose name is Colt, is the ability to die multiple times before the loop resets for you. If you have what that wristlet on your wrist is when you're doing Frank's thing for the first time, it's called a class pass. If you die there, you'll just instantly reset the loop. Instead, what we're going to do is sabotage some fireworks for a party later on in the evening so that we can guarantee that Frank will die. This is part of the critical path. You can, of course, challenge yourself and try and take out most targets, but there's only a handful of targets that we're really going to need to take out traditionally, and Harriet is one of them. You can see me sneaking in through the poison gas. I end up going into the wrong area. Again, this is a series of tunnels I don't know very well, so I'm going down underneath. I have this great plan, which is to go down into... Yeah, this guy's like, I want to jump inside and fucking die. So my plan was straight up to go down here into this area of the gas that I'd never seen before and find like a vent that would take me where I need to go. For whatever reason, jumping inside the gas disabled my invisibility and alerted everybody in the room. That leaves me in a predicament because gas is flammable in this game. So they're just staring at me. Look at this guy, he doesn't even care. He's like, drop me in, let's fucking go. So I'm just watching him. I've never actually watched him just like descend into the gas. So there you go. Fun little thing. He's in the gas, he dies. And they're like, you fucking killed him, because they're caught in this state of like, some of them are doing their routine and some of them have perceived me, and I'm like, I need to get out of here. But it turns out if they see me, they're gonna fire at the gas, and the gas is explosive and it's gonna kill me, and I can't use my invisibility to sneak out of the gas because I guess the gas negates my invisibility, which is something I didn't know. So I'm just kind of like stuck here where there's like lots of explosives. It's like an entire situation. So there's, this is why it's nice to be able to have what is essentially multiple lives. In this case, I'm like, you know what? That was a nice idea. It was cool to go off the beaten path, but instead, let's go and do something that we know will work, which is to approach from a relatively stable point of entry, which is the upper floor. We're going to teleport up here. Even though I mess it up. This is maybe the most bumbling of all the missions and the attempts that I do. And, I'm just going to break a bunch of glass. People down below will be like, oh, the glass is breaking, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to use it to hop down here. Mark any enemies that might be in my way here in the in this hangar and then approach from a different angle. It's still going to be kind of bumpy. This is maybe the worst I've ever done on this mission. There's plenty of times you can do these missions and you can sneak in and take care of folks without any sort of real indication that you were there, or at least a very minimal one. We're very fortunate that Juliana doesn't show up for a lot of these missions, because what she does is she prevents you from leaving the area until you either hack a transmitter. Well, actually, you have to hack the transmitter, but also you should probably kill Juliana because she's trying to kill you. It's one of the multiplayer component of this game is that one player will play as Juliana online and invade people's games, and another person will try and escape. I think because I have it set to friends only, we don't really get to see too much Juliana. I think later on to fix that, I just turn it into single player mode, which ensures that there's like Juliana that spawns. I could have done, online mode Juliana, but also I wanted to finish this game. The core truth of the matter is that I think this game is way, way more interesting as a game to play than as a story to experience. The core loop is fun. The central conceit is super interesting. What if all these people were locked in the same repeating day? What if there was a Groundhog Day thing, but it was like almost like a religious experience for some people and then like a party time experience for other folks? And how would people approach that, and what could that mean? But all your assassination targets are incredibly vapid. Their personalities are almost non-existent. To the point that I can tell you, the most I can tell you is like, Igor likes science, Harriet has a death cult, Alexis is a jerk who inherited a lot of money, and even with like lore documents and other things that you can find, there's not a lot of times where you get a good insight into who these people are, and that's very frustrating to me. I don't want to speak ill of another studio, right? Because I really like a lot of what Arcane does. I got to review Dishonored 2. It was one of the first games I reviewed when I was working at Kotaku. People got very mad at me because I completed it in like 12 hours or something really short. But one thing I find about the Dishonored series is that it's also more interesting as a world than as a place with characters, right? Like, do I care much about Corvo Atano? Not very much. Do I care much about, Emily Caldwell? Not very much. Do I care about Delilah? Absolutely not. But I like that world. I like the way it is presented. The art direction of that game is amazing, and that's kind of the case with this game too, where it's a situation of, I love this core idea, I love this gameplay, I really loved the process of exploring each area, going through the loops, figuring out what was optimal, even though I think the game handholds you a little, and I know it wants you to end on this specific path, but I can't believe I'm missing these targets. I know it wants to end you on this main path so that I can finish its story, but I wish there was actually a little bit more freedom for taking out targets, but I know it's really, like, from a narrative design standpoint, that's very hard. It's very hard to be like, we have all these options for taking out these targets, but we also need to get you to this very specific conclusion, because, spoiler alert, Juliana is Colt's daughter. Don't ask me how it works. There's lore stuff that goes into it. I don't care. That sounds mean, but what I mean to say by that is that, first off, they're perfect for me to just drop down and do one of those good old kills. So Harriet Morse, she is gone. One of the great things about this game too is like going through every loop and acquiring like all these upgrades when you defeat enemies and special guns and stuff. That's, I think, one of my favorite parts of the game, is actually the process of being like, well, when you start this game, you're incredibly weak. By the end of it, you're super powerful. And that power acquisition process of like going through the game and finding adequate weapons and like exploring to find a loadout that you want and getting the right drops, that's super cool. But back to the story. Juliana is Colt's I don't know why that's not igniting. There, I do that just in case there are people down there for me to kill who are going to be in my way. Juliana is Colt's daughter, and somehow yet this is still not a story about like parenthood or even like parental abandonment or even the notion of, you know, abandoning responsibilities in favor of like eternal paradise. Colt wants to break the loop, but it's not, I don't think the stakes are very well defined to explain why he wants to break the loop, except for sort of a subconscious desire to do so. You know, in theory, if we're to trust Juliana, people have been inside this loop for at least 17 years. And Colt has, I believe, escaped once and come back. There's all sorts of cool possibilities here. But ultimately, I don't, you know, I was trying to be kind about it, and I'm still trying to be kind about it. And I spoke about it on Twitter, and I think my ultimate conclusion is that I think this is such a fun game to play, like straight up. I don't regret my time with it at all. I think from a narrative design standpoint, which again is different than writing and narrative, like the actual, you know, plots and themes. From a narrative design standpoint, this game is kind of a miracle. I really like how it's clearly an iteration of, you know, things that worked in Dishonored and taking it down new paths that are almost roguelike adjacent, exploring the possibility space of what it means to make repetition meaningful for players. I think that's all very, very good. But as a story, I find it very frustrating. I don't know what this story is about. Like I said, it's not... I don't know why Juliana is Colt's daughter. It adds nothing to the story, I don't think. It doesn't enhance that core relationship. Like the and that's a shame too, because the writing in this game, like all the banter is very good, and then you get to a point where she's like, I'm your daughter, and there's clearly abandonment issues going on there, but none of it is really explored. It's all kind of quippy. And so this isn't a story about like, we are caught in this loop of violence, you know. It is not a story about a father and daughter caught in a cyclical loop of violence until they find a way to break it, and the way that they break it is through, you know, self-actualization or personal catharsis or something. It's not a story about Colt reckoning with his role in the creation of this loop and then making a really active and informed decision to break it, because he has come to believe that, you know, and it comes up a little, but it's not really well defined, but like so it's kind of about this, but not really. It's not explored enough for it to be about this. It's not about Colt saying like life is about mistakes, and without the possibility of mistakes, then you're not truly living. That comes up, but it's left very unexplored. I'm grabbing something that will allow me to sneak a little bit easier, and I'm just showing off some of my abilities. Make sure I can hack from farther away. These are all my things right here. Sniper rifle, nail gun, shift, aether. That's their names. Infusion is cool. You can spend resources to get a variety of guns or upgrades. If you don't infuse them, if you die, it's kind of like a roguelike. Before you're able to infuse, if you die, you'll lose your equipment. Here we need to go to the complex to sabotage an experiment for a fella named Igor. If we sabotage this experiment, he will have nothing to do in the evening because he won't be engrossed by his science, and he will attend the party that I mentioned before. Our big goal is to get as many people to the party as possible, and then also sabotage those fireworks so that we have another one of the targets kill themselves there. By killing all of these targets, they are called visionaries, we will be able to power up, don't ask me how, a plane that will take us to the central sort of location of where the loop is maintained, and we can confront Juliana for real. When we usually find Juliana in the game, we're fighting her. We're fighting almost like an astral projection, like a tulpa or something. Anyway, thematically, I think this game is just a dead end. And that's me speaking as a critic, and I hope that if this reaches the ears of anybody from like Arcane, please understand I think that this game is brilliant and you should be very, very proud. For me as a player, I walked away not knowing what was intending to be told to me, and if something was being told, it wasn't expressed with clear enough confidence or deft enough, not deft enough, but sufficient exploration of whatever these themes were in order for me to really sit back and say like, well, this is what this game is about. Because it's not about fathers and daughters, it's not about personal catharsis, it's not about the allure of dreams over the hard truths of reality. It's not a game about what does it mean to live forever if all you can do is live the same day over and over? It's not even a question about defining what is life, or, a game about what is life. Is life, can you have life without death, right? Or something like that. These are all questions you can explore, and I don't think the game manages to do so. What it does manage to do is provide you a great playground for killing folk. And you know what? That's fine too. I just find it frustrating as a story because I like the core relationship of Colt and Juliana, but the twist of father-daughter doesn't enhance it thematically because there are no themes being discussed, I think, in this game to begin with. Which may sound harsh, but that's just the fundamental truth of it. If I was still a critic, I think a lot of the things I would write would be exhibiting some degree of both admiration for the structure, but disappointment for the ultimate end result. And we'll get there once we get to the ending of the game. But as it stands, the actual puzzle box of each individual assassination, but then also the grand chain of one perfect day is really cool. I wish that they didn't basically just tell you, hey, follow all of these leads and we'll tell you how to beat the game. I wish it was way more a thing you had to discover for yourself. This is a game where I did take notes, which is to say I took notes on like door codes before some of them were automatically learned, or there's, like I mentioned, there's that bunker with the nuke. You can disable it by cutting wires in certain orders, and I wrote that down, right? It was like I wrote down, hey, what is it? I can even look at it here in my notes thing, which is Deathloop. Blue wire, red wire, green wire, yellow wire. The code for the device for Igor's thing that we're about to disrupt is C144. Later on, well, not later on, but beforehand, for diverting power to different areas around the station, around the island using a power station, the code was 113. I have all of these in a notes document. Very few games actually make me do that, so this, that's a big point towards for Deathloop. To disrupt the experiment, by the way, Igor's experiment is, I guess, based around invisibility. Again, what is this game about? I don't even know. But if you come here during at nighttime, where it's like the actual time where you can assassinate him, he's like permanently invisible. He has the Aether ability cranked up very high. So you can end up in this area in a gunfight against Igor, who's invisible and sniping you. And then if you're unlucky enough, like Juliana as well, which can be very exciting. Because I think on a fundamental level, like, the gun shooting and the power slinging and everything in this game is pretty strong. So we're setting ourselves up for just more bang for our buck at the party. Now Igor will be at the party. We did something in a previous loop. There are 3 people who recall what's happening from each loop to each loop. Colt retains his memory from loop to loop. Juliana remembers each loop. And then there is a robot who retains information from each loop. We have told that robot to, and we have used doctored audio to make it possible to send a message to another scientist visionary whose name is Wenji, whose gimmick is that she has clones of herself. But we said, hey, send a message from the guy giving the party, his name is Alexis, to Wenji that she can go to the party. So that means now we have Alexis, who is hosting the party, Igor, who will be attending the party because we interrupted his experiment. We have Wenji, who has a doctored invitation. Frank will be at the party setting off fireworks, which we have disabled, which means that at the very least, 4 of our targets will be taken care of in one night. We have 2 here that we are going to take out in this afternoon, so that leaves us with 6. The last 2 visionaries are Juliana and Colt. So we'll see how that goes. But here, a piece of information that you can eventually figure out is that the character that usually is inside this bunker, her name is Fia, is meeting with another character whose name is Charlie. He's one of the visionaries. He's like a game creator. He's really into creating like lived experience, like live games that make the loop exciting. So like, hey, what if we did like a shooting gallery range thing, but like it was like real, and but one person was like a space invader and we themed it or whatever, right? He's almost like a theme park guy. Like what if you put a Disney Imagineer in a Groundhog Day loop and told him that you could also kill people as part of the rides. That's Charlie, but he's in a relationship with Fia. Charlie's power is phase is the teleport. Fia's power is like a buff ability whose name escapes me right now. It's a good one to use when you're Juliana and you're trying to take down Colt because it will give you extra damage. What we are going to do though is they are underground and we are going to flood the tunnels that they are in. This is a quick way to get rid of 2 targets. It takes a while to learn this because we need to learn the code to enter this space. We need to make sure that we don't alert them to our presence. We need to make sure we understand the best route out of here for when the water rises, or else we could die. And so they're gonna get into a little bit of a lover's dispute. And for us, all we need to do is head to the flood controls and we will take them out. This is one of the reasons I like the extra distance on the phase, by the way, is because I can jump from portion to portion. It's very easy. These 2 powers together make, I don't want to say they trivialize a lot of things, but they definitely make the end game much easier. You know, you can see him phasing around and you see Fia using her rage power, right? She's high as hell right now. I wish the visionaries had like more than just their core gimmicks, right? I wish I cared about them as people. I wish like maybe there were versions of like, and this is a writing nightmare, right? Like, listen, I work at a game studio. It's easy to say, I wish that this thing existed, but features are difficult to make and implement. I get it. I wish there were different options for like, ideally, handling targets. Like, man, what if you know, and this is dark, right? So pardon me, content warning for like suicide or whatever, but like, what if we were able to talk somebody, you know, into wanting to break the loop and, you know, they agree, hey, go get the others, I'll commit suicide, it's not worth us doing this anymore. I don't know what happens when the loop ends, I might die, but it's worth it. Or, you know, I don't have any situations where I really get to talk to these people. This is the water flooding in. The only real conversations that exist are conversations I overhear them having, which are almost cartoonishly villainish, or conversations I have with Colt and Juliana, which have a nice banter and zip to them, but get a little bit more complicated once the revelation about Juliana's parentage comes to light, because it starts to take on a gravitas that feels kind of maybe unearned. But we've taken care of Charlie, we have taken care of Fia. Our next step is going to be taking care of everyone else at the party, and then heading off to handle Juliana. This game actually has 2 endings, one of which where we will break the loop, and another where we can decide to stay in the loop. Those are 2 hugely philosophically and thematically opposed ideas, and I think it's interesting that those options exist. I wish that the game gave me any reason to think that Colt would want to stay in the loop, besides the fact of like vague talk of like, man, you always come back to the loop. It should be 2 competing philosophies. The philosophy of Colt, which is one obviously about making mistakes and messiness and also personal freedom, and then Juliana, which is one of you know, that's less external, right, which is more focused on internal, and we'll see that when we talk to her. But this idea of, you know, eternity is a place where you can explore things consequence free, and that exploration is a sort of incredibly important undertaking. This idea that these 2 competing ideas of what makes a person you know, develop. Is it hardship and mistakes and things that you can't take back, or is it just time, infinite time, right? We swatch that there so that we can make sure that we can have a Juliana showing up at the very least. It turns out my friends weren't really popping in, but you know, I wish that the game was maybe about that. I wish that the game was maybe about this idea of 2 competing ideas of human development, one of which is that personal development is fleeting, and that mortality is the thing that gives our actions and our development meaning, right? If nothing we do matters because of death or something, let's say, I don't know if I believe that, right? I don't have really hard feelings or about death one way or another, or the afterlife. I would like to think that there is an afterlife, but I also fully accept the possibility that that is me as a person who believes in the efficacy of art, who's also trying to justify this notion that, like, man, I would hate a universe where art doesn't mean anything, or where human suffering has never meant anything, where it's just a pointless sort of flash in the pan, a beautiful flash in the pan no matter what, but pointless would really bother me. But, you know, in a game like this, you can explore these notions, right, of, hey, you know, is a thing that gives our lives validity, more validity, or more, you know, weight and importance, the fact that they will, you know, our lives will end, or is the thing that matters, you know, overcoming the limitation of mortality, overcoming the limitation of time, and using that to develop our personal thoughts and philosophies beyond what we might be able to do in the course of, you know, anywhere from, if we're lucky, you know, 60 to 80 years or maybe more if you're even lucky, right? But like, I don't know, a truck could hit me tomorrow, right? I could die. I have all these thoughts about art and everything. If I had even more time, though, those thoughts could develop. I could write down a suitable exegesis on my theories about art, my thoughts about art, or do it in a way that at least it is recorded. Even though in this day and age, having things recorded means nothing. Right? I have so many things on YouTube where I've probably said interesting stuff and nobody's paying attention to that. I'm not saying it's life-changing stuff, but my creations are a flash in the pan. I think there was a part of me when I was a writer, which is to say when I was a video game critic, that thought maybe a canon of understanding could be built. Maybe my writing and then other people's writing could form a sort of canon, the same way that there are pieces of film theory that you read, right? Like the way that people should read Austin Walker the same way that, like, or at least people should, if they're interested in games criticism. And Austin will never hear this, he'll never know I said this. Maybe I'll tell him that I made this comparison, and he'll say that it was too big of a comparison. But like, people should be reading Austin, or I'm getting shot by Juliana. I don't know from where. Oh yeah, she's getting me from the rooftop up above maybe, so I'm just gonna try and be careful. But what I'm trying to say is, like, also, that is Frank blowing himself up with the fireworks. That's why we sabotage them. It means he takes care of himself, basically. People should read Austin the same way that people read fucking, like, Pauline Kael. Right? The fact that games criticism was never able to develop and still has not been able to develop, and my work was not able to help develop a sort of body of critical theory for games, and is disheartening to me, right? But like, with infinite time, maybe I could really develop it, right? Maybe if I was in the loop. Instead, it's fallen on the shoulders of academics who invariably I have very low opinions of. I think they're especially games academics, they're self-important. They believe in the value of systems over the efficacy of stories. And I think fundamentally they are boring and unimaginative people who care less about games as storytelling tools than they do as curious activities in like an anthropological sense. And to me, that's kind of gross, right? For me, games or anything else is a vector for delivering stories, because I think that there is, not to sound like Tyrion Lannister at the end of the very bad Game of Thrones finale of what's more powerful than anything else? Stories. But I do believe in the strength of stories. Stories have changed me. Stories have made me a better person. There's a reason I am sitting down to write a fanfic version of the story of Skies of Arcadia, which only, by the time I'm done with it, maybe 1,000 people will have read. It's because I believe in the efficacy of that story. It fundamentally changed my being. A video game, a silly video game about pirates or whatever, fundamentally changed my being. And that, if I told that to a game academic, they wouldn't give a shit, right? They wouldn't care. At least I don't think. My opinion of game academics is that they don't care about the emotional affect of what games do. They care about the raw mechanics of games in a way that I find crass, distasteful, and which ultimately misses the point. So this leaves video game criticism in two places. One where there is no canon of work for talking about the emotionality of games, partly because games criticism is balkanized between academia, mainstream press, and now things like YouTube. So there's no there's less of a chance for things to be in conversation with each other, and there's less of a chance for audiences to really have access to all the same stuff or interest. Also, I've seen the numbers on stuff. People read like even the best pieces of criticism, they read for maybe 2 days, and then they never touch it again. People don't go back to it. If they do, it's like very small. I don't know who spots me. I think it's Juliana, and then that alerts these snipers on the roof. But I guess what I'm saying is, this is a long tangent for me to also say, I wish that this was a game about questions of human potential, about whether or not the thing that makes humans beautiful is our temporality, or if by transcending temporality we become, we become unto our, as gods or something, right? And whether or not that those pretensions are correct, or whether or not they're desirable, right? It's fucking Highlander, right? Like, who wants to live forever? And who wants to live forever if it's the same day always, right? Groundhog Day did this, except at least, that's a gorgeous movie, right? And I think ultimately, I think Colt's notion of, as much as it is expressed in this game, which is very little, of a world where your mistakes are allowed to remain and aren't overwritten at the end of the day, means that your life is more meaningful, is something I agree with. There's a line from Groundhog Day, which I think applies partially to this game and to anything that involves time loops, which is Phil Connors, the character who is caught in that loop, and in theory is caught in that loop for like a century. He's in there long enough to learn how to professionally play multiple instruments, to read almost every book in that library, to learn the routine of every person in a single town. He wakes up on the next day and he realizes something is different. And he's there. He went to bed with this lady named Rita, who's played by Andy McDowell, who's just incredibly charming. And Phil says, anything different is good. And I think about that quote a lot in the context of a lot of things, right? Anything different is good because anything different challenges your mindset. Anything different is good because it's an opportunity to experience, new sensations, new victories, new failures, new. Anything different is good because if we froze ourselves in, the crystal ball of time, then all we are just, fossils in amber, right? But the game doesn't explore these things. These are things that the game can make us ask. But this is not a game about those sorts of things in the way that Groundhog Day is a game. It's not, a game, but a piece of media about the importance of time and development, the importance of self-actualization, making sure your time is well spent, right? One of the things that's huge about the people in this game is that they don't spend their time well. This is just a party. People can go, like, the point of this party is people go on stage, they brag about things. If people like the thing they brag about, they live. If they don't, they die. Like, this is what bored rich people would maybe do, but everybody's a fucking cartoon cutout. I feel like I got more development out of sometimes the splicers of BioShock, and they're just like drugged out, superpowered people. I'm looking for my target here. His name is Alexis Dorsey, by the way. He is going to be wearing a wolf mask, except everyone at this party is wearing a wolf mask. I marked somebody who I think is him. There's a couple ways to identify Alexis at this party. One is to play his favorite music so that he'll dance. One is to sabotage his favorite beverage, which is chocolate beer, so that he'll throw a tantrum. And I know he's down there, I can hear him. And the other is that he will get on stage and brag about a particular thing. And I am right near a button that will allow me to open the trapdoor on stage. So for me, the route that I have chosen to get rid of Alexis is to have him go up on stage. Once I know it's him, hit the button, have him fall into what is presumably like a meat grinder or something, and die. It's not quite a stealth kill, but it is. They fall in. There's clearly a sound of them getting sliced up by something. I'm also considering that this might be Alexis, that I've marked the wrong target. Right? One way that you can sometimes tell it's him is that if he's holding, excuse me while I clear my throat, rare guns. If he is holding rare guns, then you know it's Alexis. I see this though. I see a guy dancing, bam, 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 and I go, that's probably him. But I think I end up being incorrect, or maybe correct. But like, there are people here who are like, I got rid of schools and made people work on factory lines. This person's like, I gaslit my mother. Like, everybody's a fucking cartoon character. I know you don't need to have sympathy for everybody in every game that you play, right? Like, sometimes enemies are just enemies in games. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't need to talk to all of the monsters, right? In Doom, sometimes I just want to rip up demons or whatever. But here it's like, at least I know what Rapture is about. This is him. I don't know where he came from. So this is Alexis. So we get him. He's bragging about the way that he got his fortune. That's how we know it's him. If you know enough about his backstory, that is a way that you can identify him. Right, you can go, oh, he's talking about, I know somebody with that backstory, and it is Alexis. So we'll do that. Now I have 2 more targets of the party. I have to get rid of Igor, and I need to get rid of Wenji. They are both scientists. Igor, we sabotaged his experiment. Wenji, we forged an invitation, and now we just need to sneak our way through. I think the party is probably the best designed part of the game. It's clearly one where a lot of focus was put in because it's where you can potentially eliminate the most targets. So there's tons of AI considerations. There's tons of narrative considerations. This is also one of the few missions or parts of the game where it feels like there are multiple ways to dispatch of a target, Alexis in particular. So, and it's also like, this is one where it's like very well designed for navigating the space using your powers. I like this game a lot. I just wish that it was exploring a lot of fun stuff, and it doesn't quite do that. The core idea is so cool. The time loop thing is great. I'm in love with it. I would love to see another game that does a similar thing, but also like when you do that now, you ultimately just get compared to Deathloop, right? But it is a very cool thing. I know that Igor and Wenji are on the roof. They're marked, but I don't have the greatest sense of where they might be. They might be out that way, but I think that's like a party deck. So I want to go up pretty high and scout out is how I'm doing it here. This is some pretty old school, just like sneaking around, right? Immersive sims sneaking around, using your powers, moving, grooving, getting where you gotta go. I'm worried about the possibility that Juliana could show up on this rooftop and just like ruin my day. Really hard to know. I think that Igor and Wenji are over there. The indicators seem to you know, indicate that they are there. But that leaves me with a dilemma. Visionary, yeah, I can see Igor talking. Visionaries in this game are very tough. I misthrow a grenade because my plan was to blow them the fuck up. So it doesn't quite work out, but they are right near here. So I do just start throwing grenades. I get lucky. Wenji gets thrown over the edge, so Wenji's gone. Igor is blown up, but I have no sense of where Igor has gone quite. I'm turning around to see if anybody is gonna maybe try sneaking up on me, but I don't think they have a good sense of where the grenades came from. This is not the most elegant way. I know Igor is either on that roof or went inside. I peer, I see Igor. We get him. Very good. So we have killed all the visionaries that we need to get rid of. If we kill Juliana, like if she shows up, it doesn't count as like quote unquote killing Juliana, but we have done basically everything we've set out to do. Now we need to exfiltrate, get in a special rocket plane, go to the center of the time loop device, confront Juliana. It's one of the few times that I think there's like an actual narrative scene in this game. This is a systems and mechanics and experience driven game. It is not one where there's a lot of, like I said, sitting down with other characters or things like that. There's no time where it's like, you know, like, what do I know about Alexis? I know just enough to be able to maybe identify him at a party to kill him. I've heard him talk through audio logs or things like that, but do I get to interact with him? No. What do I know about Frank, who I blew up with fireworks, who you barely even see this run? I know that he is charismatic, throws a lot of parties. I know that he had some sort of pre-existing relationship with Colt, who appears to be bisexual, even though he was married at a time to a woman, and they had Juliana together. There's vague implications that relationship was abusive, if I remember correctly. Not the marriage one, but the one between Colt and Frank. It's like, but like, I don't get to know Colt's feelings about that. So I have a lot of frustrations, right? There's a cast of 6 targets that I gotta get rid of, whose personalities, like, there's a baseline of something there, but it's not, it doesn't feel deeply fully developed, right? You know, it's not like, you know, like, Charlie designs games. Do I have a sense of why Charlie designed games? I played through this entire experience, you know, played through Deathloop. Do I have an understanding of Charlie's motives for designing games, except maybe perhaps just a childish, a persistently childish idea to, you know, with the power of eternity, just play make-believe? Not really. And even if that is Charlie's situation, that's interesting, and it doesn't go very explored, right? That's my big thing. It's like, you can use each of the visionaries to talk about a different way in which we delude ourselves from engaging with the real world, right? And this is when I put on the critical hat, and I start to figure out exactly what's going on with some of these characters, right? If you have infinite time, what do? Well, Charlie will play. Fia will create art. Alexis will, I guess, party? But that's a really vapid one. There's not a lot going on there, right? Alexis's biggest defining character trait is his love of money and like industry and things like that, and that doesn't get very well developed. Juliana's thing is that she was signed on to be an archivist, right? If you have an eternity to develop intellectual thought, then having somebody around whose job is to just keep a record of everything is super important. What is Frank's thing? what would he do for eternity? He would socialize and schmooze, maybe. Right? What is Wenji's thing? What Wenji's and Igor's thing? Well, they would do science. These are all interesting, but I don't get to hear too much from these people about why they care so much about these things. And I think if characters care about something, I'm not asking for, a boring sequence where they just tell me this is the thing that I am about, but it should be something that comes out a little bit more, and it doesn't necessarily come out in Deathloop. You kind of have to wrest it from the hands of a lot of lore notes and personal supposition. Why did Colt care, right? Presumably because it allowed him a space where he could run away from the personal responsibilities, and the realities of a crumbling marriage, or whatever. Actually, it's entirely unclear to me. People are going to be like, "How do you not know?" I think the wife is dead. Must be, right? So if that's the case, then hey, this is a place where Colt can grieve. But if this is a place where Colt can grieve, that's not what this game is about, right? It's not. It's not. It's not. Hey, one thing that he needs to do is overcome his grief, and the thing that will help him overcome his grief is reconciling his relationship with Juliana, the only vestige that he has to this relationship of his that mattered. It's not really about that, right? Like, and even if it was, then you would have to ask, at least then that would make the question of breaking the loop or staying in the loop more significant, right? Is it personal development for him to break through, in order to accept his guilt and embrace a world where his failures exist? Or is it he's not ready to process that guilt, so he decides to stay inside the fantasy world? That stuff is there. It's hanging on the periphery of the game, but it doesn't really exist as themes that are really really explored in a way that is important. Like, there's all this backstory, right? Like, he was a member of the military. He went on an expedition to find this temporal anomaly. That's when he meets his wife. It's like a bunch of stuff. He gets demoted because of his relationship, and a bunch of stuff. Like, there's things that going on. It's just like there's tons of stuff, and it's not really explained well, and not as thematically interesting. It's like he encounters the anomaly, he is demoted, he ends up in an asylum and being institutionalized. Igor finds him and he gets pulled into this program. And he's like their security guy, but like, why does he want to secure this loop? I don't know. It's like all this past stuff doesn't work. Like, I don't know. It's like, if it sounds like I'm complaining, I don't mean to sound like I'm complaining. I think this is a very smart game. I think sometimes confuses lore with storytelling. And those two things are not the same. Lore is not storytelling. Lore is a thing that informs your storytelling. It informs your world. And right, Juliana's argument here is that she's going to say, hey, I'm unarmed, and we're going to talk. And the thing I'm going to try and convince you is that we will have infinite time to do whatever we want, and we can do that for all sorts of good means. In the speedrun, by the way, people shoot through the door and kill Juliana. They don't even have the discussion. The speedrun in this game is balls bonkers. People complete it in like 20 minutes or even shorter now. It's just weird, right? You know, it's like I don't know, and this is me going through options because I want to take cool pictures. By the way, this is because I was playing at the time. I was like, oh, I want cool pictures to use for thumbnails or for other stuff. But Cole's trapped in the loop for a long time and then institutionalized, and then he comes back, but I have no clue why he comes back and why he wants to preserve the loop and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's really frustrating to me. Right, it's like, it's really weird. You know, this isn't a game that even discusses, pardon my slurring, the nature of paradise, necessarily. This is the closest that we're going to get, which is Juliana explaining that, at least it's, time is good, but like the relationship between, like, no, I don't think anything about this ending is enhanced by having it be a father-daughter thing.
Did it ever occur to you that I always wake up first? So if we survive the collapse of the loop, you'll wake up with the barrel of my gun in your mouth.
Dying for real beats living.
That's the closest we get to a thesis, right? Dying for real beats living like this. Right, this idea of mortality and temporality and the existence of mistakes and messiness being some of the things that give life meaning. It's here, but man, it's just happening at the end. If I've been harsh to this game, I don't mean to be. I do like it.
So I can forget the answers like
But it's definitely this situation of there's a lot to explore, and a lot of it feels like she says, like, this is her pitch. Stay, I'll show you incredible things. Right? It doesn't, what does it mean? Right? Like, it doesn't mean much, right? Like, there needs to be a better pitch here. There needs to be a better pitch of like, man, if we have infinite time, we will cure cancer. If we have infinite time, we will solve global warming, depending on what happens outside the loop, right? And then that becomes the question of like, man, if we're stuck in the same loop for 17 years, is it a day outside that's passed, or has 17 years passed outside? You know, is it too late for us to solve these problems, right? These are the interesting things, but it doesn't end up coming up. The conversation here is either we can end the loop, or you can stay here and you can see cool shit.
Amazing things.
Other worlds, other times. It's too vague. It's too vague. This is not a discussion, right? This is not a discussion that's gonna sway players, right? And like, the idea is like, what am I gonna do? Not pull the trigger? No, the loop needs to end. I'm sorry, I'm going to shoot.
Juliana, you liar. You fucking liar.
And the idea needs to be, but like, this moment isn't earned, even if their core relationship is entertaining, because there's no time for Colt to struggle. There's no time for them to really talk about competing ideologies, because they don't have competing ideologies. No one in this game has an ideology. They have the veneer of ideologies, the veneer of belief systems, but they don't believe in anything. I think the characters of this game fundamentally don't believe in anything. I think this game doesn't fundamentally necessarily believe in anything on a thematic level. Even though it gives you an ending like this. Waking up. You know, giving up, it doesn't, that doesn't matter though. It's like, if the choice is like breaking the loop or maintaining your relationship with your daughter, then there needs to be something done to really make the father-daughter thing work. Or there needs to be something done to make the idea of staying in the loop more compelling.
Here goes.
This idea of moving forward past mistakes and not being caught in the past or all sorts of things is very important, but I think there's tons of ideas, but no thesis, right? Imagine a paper full of paragraphs, interesting paragraphs, but they don't connect. And there's no conclusion. That's how I feel about the story of this game. From a design standpoint, it is amazing to play. From narrative design and all the moving parts and widgets and sprockets, a miracle. On a environmental design level, because environment art and character art, it all looks good. It is a great technical achievement. I just. It's hard. It's really hard. I want to love this, but I don't. There's that quote from Macbeth, which boy, it's harsh, but and I'm saying it just so I can quote Macbeth. Out, brief candle, life's but a waking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. This idea of life as this foolish enterprise with perhaps no significance. And this idea of it containing noise and action, but ultimately signifying nothing. Now, this is Macbeth talking about the death of Lady Macbeth in Act 5 of Macbeth. Sorry, I was a person who studied Shakespeare in college. Tomorrow, right? He says, what is it? She should have died hereafter, that there would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Creeps in this petty place from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. It's just tricky. It's hard. I like this game. I don't know what it was about. I don't know what it was leading to. I don't regret my time with it, but I do wish that it had more to say. There are so many great ideas here, and it doesn't, for me, narratively land where I want it to land, which is a shame, because ultimately I care more about stories than I'm ever going to really care about systems or anything else. Sorry. Then again, worth playing. You should play it. If you watched all this, you probably spoiled yourself. But that was Deathloop. I do like it. We finished it. I'm on to play Tales of Arise next, and also do a lot more writing. So that should be very fun. A little bit of a rest from fighting games. They're frustrating me a little, and my hand hurts. So we'll get there. But there will be fighting game content on the channel still. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, this was Deathloop. I will see you all around. I'm clicking on a thing. Goodbye.